There are only two things that matter with a VPN. Does the VPN use open source software that users can verify is not logging their internet activity? Have police gotten a court order to get user activity logs from that VPN, only to find out that the logs never existed because of the company's transparent no-log policy? The only VPN who can answer yes to both of those questions is private internet access. The only VPN who can prove that your data stays private. They're giving you 83% off, which is just $203 a month, plus 4 extra months for free at piavpn.com/DavidP. Welcome to the show. We have a very interesting situation here where we are starting to see a slice of MAGA turn on Donald Trump because of this tech bro citizen database that Donald Trump is trying to get Peter Thiel to build for him. We talked about this a little bit on a bonus show earlier this week. It's getting more attention. It's becoming more prominent of a discussion within the MAGA space, where there are all sorts of people who say this is a betrayal by Donald Trump. So let's talk about it. But big picture, you know it's bad when even some of Donald Trump's most diehard supporters start to say, this is not what we signed up for. Not because Donald Trump compromised, not because Donald Trump went woke, but because he seems to be crossing a line that even some of MAGA simply can't stomach. What Trump wants to do and what he's moving forward on is building a centralized surveillance database of American citizens in this particular case. And the tech bro that's going to help him do it is Peter Thiel. Born in Germany, relevant because, despite the rhetoric, two of the most important sort of clingers to this administration's second term have been South African Elon Musk and German Peter Thiel. And Peter Thiel and Palantir, his company, are now going to be building the architecture of this digital authoritarianism right here in the United States to surveil you. And so this is not fear-mongering. This is not some hypothetical of what they want to do. This is what they are doing. Donald Trump's administration is contracted with Palantir to compile a massive database with your taxes and your debts, your medical records, your immigration status, your political donations, even your social media connections, all under one roof, to build a profile of all citizens. And it is really the dream of every authoritarian regime. You go back to 20th century authoritarianism. They didn't have this. Why didn't they have it? Not because they didn't want it, but because the technology of the 20th century couldn't support this, especially before 1950. MAGA, thanks to technology and people like Peter Thiel, is now going to be able to be the victims of the monster they helped to create, because they are not in control. Trump and Peter Thiel, it was previously Elon Musk, now Musk is out. These are the people who are in control. Now, pro-Trump influencers are melting down. One said, I didn't flip on Trump, Trump flipped on us. Another said, I did not vote for this. Nick Fuentes, the white nationalist who practically worshiped Trump, is calling this citizen database the ultimate betrayal. Now, if we're honest, which I always try to be, there's a reason every authoritarian government wants a database like this. Nazi Germany used census data to track Jews and other political dissidents of different kinds. East Germany's Stasi kept files on millions of citizens, friends spying on friends, families torn apart. China's modern social credit system gives points to citizens based on loyalty to the government, and you make a mistake, you get blacklisted, it might impact your ability to get a job or a house or to even travel. That's what centralized data really enables. Not safety, not efficiency. We're going to talk about this in the context of Donald Trump's new travel ban, by the way. It's about control and retaliation and obedience, and not about efficiency or streamlining government. And the people immediately around Trump, the whole point of this thing is to give one guy and his billionaire cronies that are on the good boy list temporarily, typically, the keys to your life. That's what this is about. One search bar, every detail a click away about everything you've done. And the kicker is that this is what they call efficient government. So it's not hypothetical anymore. It's not if Trump becomes president and starts to give in to his most dictatorial instincts. This is what it looks like. It's a software dictatorship of sorts. There's no tanks on the street, although there will be, I guess, for Donald Trump's birthday parade. There's no uniforms like the Stasi or whatever for now. It's code. It's computer code built by a guy, Peter Thiel, under the tutelage of Donald Trump, or maybe it's vice versa, people who believe that democracy is overrated. And the greater insult is that it is all funded with your tax dollars. You are paying for this centralized citizen database signed into existence by the orange guy that MAGA thought was going to be their savior. So even some of them are starting to see this now, and they say this is going too far. Will they do anything about it? Well, that I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see. Donald Trump just announced a new travel ban affecting 19 countries. Trump said in a video it's because of the recent attack in Boulder, Colorado that he's doing this, but somehow none of the countries that Trump is banning are where the Boulder attacker was actually from. I'm going to explain that. Donald Trump in this video we're going to listen to cited the terror attack in Boulder, Colorado as at least a partial justification for this new ban. He said lax visa enforcement and national security threats are part of this. But the suspect in the Boulder, Colorado fiasco is an Egyptian who overstayed his tourist visa. So, of course, Egypt would be on the list, right? Wrong. Egypt is not on the list. Chad is on the list. Togo is. So is Turkmenistan, Eritrea, places with no connection to the attack that Trump says was the catalyst for this. Some places with zero history of international terrorism targeting the United States. And in some cases, zero logic behind banning them at all, other than it sounds foreign. So listen, don't take my word for it. Let's listen to Donald Trump explain this.
The recent terror attack in Boulder, Colorado has underscored the extreme dangers posed to our country by the entry of foreign nationals who are not properly vetted, as well as those who come here as temporary visitors and overstay their visas. We don't want them. In the 21st century, we've seen one terror attack after another carried out by foreign visa overstayers from dangerous places all over the world. And thanks to Biden's open door policies, today there are millions and millions of these illegals who should not be in our country. In my first term, my powerful travel restrictions were one of our most successful policies.
They were not successful.
And they were a key part of preventing major foreign terror attacks on American soil. We will not let what happened in Europe happen to America. That's why on my first day back in office, I directed the Secretary of State to perform a security review of high-risk regions and make recommendations for where restrictions should be imposed. Among the national security threats their analysis considered are the large-scale presence of terrorists, failure to cooperate on visa security, inability to verify travelers' identities, inadequate record-keeping of criminal histories, and persistently high rates of illegal visa overstays, and other things. Very simply, we cannot have open migration from any country where we cannot safely and reliably vet and screen those who seek to enter the United States.
All right. I think you get the point. This is not the first time Donald Trump has done this. He refers to the supposed successes of his first-term travel ban. You'll remember that the 2017 Muslim ban, as it was known, it didn't even include the countries responsible for 9/11, even though supposedly that was part of the motivation for doing it. Saudi Arabia wasn't on the list. Egypt wasn't on the list. UAE wasn't. He sort of banned random majority Muslim countries with little to no terror record against the United States. That was a broken playbook then. It's the same broken playbook right now. Ban whoever looks scary on a map and say you're doing it for national security. But I think the timing is also relevant here because this stunt is not coming out of nowhere. The so-called big, beautiful bill Trump's signature and really only actual potential policy accomplishment, is completely stalled in the Senate now, with many Republicans saying in its current form, we can't vote for it. We'll talk about that on the bonus show. But there are now Republicans saying that bill goes too far. So that was potentially going to be an accomplishment that is now facing significant headwinds. Remember how Donald Trump promised that world leaders were going to come to him with tears in their eyes, begging to make a trade deal once he put tariffs in place. And it's been crickets. No phone calls. We were told 90 deals in 90 days. We're at 0 deals in 120 days. So he's failing on all those fronts. What does he do instead? He falls back on what he knows best, which is fear, a travel ban, immigrants, foreign threats, countries with many letters in their names, anything to dominate the news cycle and appear to be in control, even when he's clearly completely confused about what to do and pretty checked out mentally as well. We'll talk about that later in the show, too. If you were actually serious about preventing visa overstays, which, by the way, I think is a worthy effort, when we talk about, well, building the wall, what about other areas like visa overstays? I've been an advocate for dealing with visa overstays, but there are real solutions that you can look at. Improve data sharing with countries that we issue visas to. Data sharing is currently a disaster. Improving that data sharing could make a lot of this travel ban unnecessary, even if you theoretically believe it will work, which I don't believe it will. Expand in-country vetting through consulates and embassies. This is not sexy stuff, right? It's much more titillating to go, I've got a list of countries and you're banned, just like you were fired on Trump's reality show, you're banned. But this is the sort of stuff that it actually takes. Use targeted overstay tracking with existing technology that's in place and functional right now. Maybe if you're going to do a list that includes countries relevant to the incidents that you are citing. But instead, what Donald Trump is throw together another one of these bans that excludes the only country tied to the attack he cites as a catalyst, the Boulder attack and the country of Egypt, because the goal is not really to protect Americans, it's to distract Americans. And when nothing else is working, the tariffs aren't working, the economy's not working, his own party's not even working together with him, Trump reaches for the oldest, sort of laziest trick in the book. This is analogous to when actual police reform isn't popular, when you can't do the actual police reform you need to do, you hear from people, just defund the police. And I've said, that's low energy. That's low effort. We have a 10 to 12 point plan for how to reform the police. It's more work, but it'll work better. They go, let's just defund the whole thing. I've been critical of that. I don't think it makes sense. Similarly, when nothing is working, you go, let's ban people from scary sounding countries. Scary to them, of course. Blame outsiders, blame foreigners, and hope you get an attaboy pat on the back for keeping us safe and that nobody asks any questions. And meanwhile, as we spoke about at the top of the show, he's putting together a Peter Thiel Palantir created citizenship database to centralize all information about you and me and every other American citizen. Disastrous, confused stuff. But is anybody surprised? Because this is, at this point, certainly what I expect. Let me know what you think. info@davidpakman.com. And remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/The David Pakman Show, where we are slowly but surely huffing and puffing and chugging towards 3.5 million YouTube subscribers. We'll take a quick break and be right back. So many different VPNs reach out to me wanting to advertise on the show, and I always turn them down because most of them do not pass the sniff test. Most VPNs are all owned by the same big mysterious company. They log your internet activity so they can sell it or give it to law enforcement. And these VPNs are just out to make a buck without really protecting your privacy. The only VPN I trust enough to have as a sponsor is Private Internet Access. Our sponsor, Private Internet Access, is the only VPN who has proven multiple times in legal proceedings they don't keep logs of your activity. The judge ordered that PIA show user activity history. Each time they demonstrated they don't have the records. That no log policy is also independently audited by Deloitte. And PIA is also open source. So you can also see in the code that none of your activity is being logged. And you can protect unlimited devices with just a single account. Private internet access is giving my audience 83% off, which is just $203 a month, plus 4 extra months for free. Go to piavpn.com/DavidP. The link is down below. The David Pakman Show continues to be an audience-supported program. Our primary source of funding is the audience. People like you who listen to the podcast, watch YouTube clips, watch clips on Instagram or Facebook or Snapchat or TikTok or whatever platform we're on, and say, hey, I'm going to contribute a few bucks here. I'm going to get access to the great perks that you offer. So consider the full David Pakman Show experience. You can sign up at joinpakman.com. And you can also use the coupon code ITWILLENDSOON to save about 50% off of the cost of a membership. I don't know that there has ever been a less qualified Secretary of Education than Linda McMahon. I am going to show you the caliber of what this Secretary of Education, did I say Secretary of Education or State before? Now I think my brain glitched. I'm going to show you the caliber of this Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon. And only Betsy DeVos, Trump's first term Secretary of Education, even comes close. As you may know, Linda McMahon is big mad about DEI. She wants to get rid of all DEI. She says some of it's illegal, etc. Well, Congresswoman Lee started questioning Linda McMahon. What about teaching the Tulsa race massacre? What about teaching that Joe Biden won the 2020 election? Are these considered DEI? Is this illegal curricula? And I don't think it will shock you to hear that Linda McMahon suffered a complete and total collapse on what are pretty damn simple questions.
Was it I would like to your thoughts on simple yes or no. If this is a illegal DEI, an example, would you say that it would be an illegal DEI for a lesson plan on the Tulsa race massacre?
I'd have to get back to you on that.
I would have to get back to you on that. Why would it be illegal to teach about the Tulsa race massacre? McMahon's not sure.
Do you know what the Tulsa race massacre is?
I'd like to look into it more and get back to you on it.
Okay, so I look forward to that. How about...
By the way, it's not even clear she knows what it is.
The book, Through My Eyes by Ruby Bridges, for instance.
I haven't read that.
Have you learned about Ruby Bridges?
If you have specific examples you'd like
That
to
was a
cite,
specific example.
I'll be very happy.
It was
for
an
you-
incredibly
for
specific
you to
example.
submit
I named
those
a
in your
specific book.
questions, and I will look into it and get back to you on
Thank
them. I
you.
look
How
forward
about
to
a
answering them
school having a
directly.
voluntary celebration for Pride Month?
Well, I think that,
Voluntary.
well, let's make sure that in our schools...
This is yes or no?
We're looking... No, it's not.
Okay. How was it I would like to your thoughts?
Okay, so like that's pretty bad, right? That's like a 7 out of 10 as to how bad it is, but it gets even worse. Then the question becomes, what about a social studies class that teaches Biden won the 2020 election? A historical fact, an empirical reality, an undeniable truth. McMahon's not totally sure because she goes, well, it should be taught accurately. And of course, we all know what this is about. This is less about what Linda McMahon believes. I think Linda McMahon believes and knows that Donald Trump lost the 2020 election, but she doesn't want to get in trouble with the big guy. This is about virtue signaling and proving her loyalty. And proving loyalty includes being evasive as to whether it is accurate to teach that Joe Biden won the 2020 election.
Okay. How about social studies standards that teach that President Biden won the 2020 election?
I think our studies should all be taught accurately.
Okay, better answer would be Biden won, so it would be correct to teach that. But she doesn't say that. She's evasive.
Yes or no?
I think our studies should
No.
be taught
The
accurately.
question was, do you believe that social studies standards that teach that President Biden won the 2020 election is an illegal DEI? Yes or no?
I think I have said we should teach accurately. We should.
No,
be
you
on
have not
all
answered
sides.
the question.
Well,
I
answering
don't
the
understand
question.
why you're incapable
I'm
of
just
answering.
not giving you the answer you want.
No,
but
I
I'm
want the
answering
answer,
question.
whatever your answer is.
I just gave you the answer.
No, the answer is yes or no.
No, the answer is
The answer is yes or no.
Gentleladies,
Thank you so
time
much.
is-
I yield back.
She is not going to answer the question with a yes or no. Certainly not with a, of course it's okay to teach that Biden won. Because rule number one of MAGA Trumpism, the first commandment of the MAGA cult is never acknowledge that your guy might have lost something sometime. These are not tough questions and these are not trick questions. We then get to yet another question. What about African studies, Middle Eastern studies, Chinese studies? What about that? And Linda McMahon says, we should be teaching both sides of that stuff. What are both sides of African American history? Slavery was good and slavery was bad, or I don't even know what that means. But this is where we are today.
Secretary McMahon, during your confirmation hearing, you were asked by Senator Chris Murphy if an African American history class violated the administration's position on diversity, equity, and inclusion. You said you'd like to look into it. You've been on the job for a few months now. Have you been able to look into it?
I do not think that African studies or Middle East studies or Chinese studies are part of DEI if they are taught as part of the total history package. So that if you're giving the facts on both sides, of course they're not DEI.
Both sides.
I don't know what both sides of African American history would be.
Well, if African American history is part of
certainly,
history,
but what we recognize
it's being
throughout
taught
what we recognize throughout education is that a course is only 1 year or one semester. It would be impossible to teach African history and say European history at the same time. Do you not agree that it makes sense that there would be separate courses for these courses of study? It has happened throughout history. We're able to do it not just in history courses. We're able to do it with different types of literature courses or different types of music courses. One wouldn't learn about Baroque music and necessarily have to also learn about African drumming at the same time, right? We can separate those courses.
Yes, we can. And I think just as we teach U.S. history as a separate course.
Certainly. So you do not agree. So you do agree that African American cultures and African history should not be eliminated from courses, particularly AP African history.
Well, I think that African history can certainly be taught and not be considered a DEI.
There you go. So hard to find a less qualified person to be in this role. The topic of magnet schools came up. Magnet schools are free public elementary and secondary schools of choice with specialized curricula meant to attract students from various backgrounds. Linda McMahon says magnet schools are great. It is pointed out that the budget doesn't seem to coincide with that. And Linda McMahon goes, I guess you've looked at the wrong budget. And then it is pointed out, actually, the budget says nothing about that.
But what your budget does is it undercuts parental choice because magnet schools are choice-driven programs. I can say that personally because my daughter attended a magnet school, and it was an excellent education experience. You zeroed out that account, which is completely undercuts and contradicts the hype in your opening statement about supporting parental choice. I mean, why wouldn't you support magnet schools?
I do support magnet schools, and as we both know, in Connecticut, I'll speak to magnet schools, but also in Connecticut, there has been the lowest growth in charter schools. I think we're like fifth from the bottom in the country for allowing more charter school growth.
So why zero out magnets?
Magnet schools are also, as are charter schools, they are public schools. So in the public schools funding, then I think that as the states have more control over their state budgets, they can allocate those dollars to magnet schools. I think magnet schools are great. And I know that a lot of them do focus on particular kinds of
thank
studies.
you. Just reclaiming my talk is cheap. Budgets are what count. And,
Yes,
and
but
this budget does not say that magnet schools are
referenced,
great. I have another question.
Well,
I want to just
you
move
referenced the
on.
skinny budget, and that was an operating plan. We now have the full budget, so we might take another look at that.
Yeah,
You
it
may
says
still-
zero.
You may still
Yeah, there's just nothing in there. Oh, we love magnet schools. No problem whatsoever. Well, why didn't you fund them? We did. Well, not in the skinny budget. No, it's in the full budget. No, it's not in the full budget either. Who the hell knows? And then finally, this both sides thing. Should Holocaust denial, for example, be taught if her claim is we need to be teaching both sides with history? It just gets wacky.
Reclaiming my time.
You want to know what my
Reclaiming my
response
time,
is?
Madam Secretary.
Okay, well, you go
Gentleman
ahead.
Secretary, would the Harvard Medical School who's looking to hire an immunologist, would that person need to adhere to HHS Secretary Kennedy's view on the efficacy of vaccines?
Listen, we all know that we should have our universities look at what all the programs are.
I don't think you really thought through this viewpoint diversity issue
that you're trying to put forth is a false narrative.
Okay.
And the funding is a privilege.
Madam Secretary, reclaim my time. Does refusing to hire a Holocaust denier as a member of Harvard's history department faculty count as an ideological litmus test?
I believe that there should be diversity of viewpoints relative to teachings and opinions on campuses.
Well, what about this situation of Harvard's history department, and they're looking for another department member? Would being a Holocaust denier count?
Well, I do know that Harvard did replace its head of Middle Eastern studies even before we looked at it, because they believe.
Anyway, she just doesn't have she doesn't have the cards, to quote Donald Trump. She just doesn't have what it takes to be in this role. And of course, we all know that when they talk about viewpoint diversity in general, they really only mean it in specific cases. They don't mean, oh no, you've got to have a Holocaust denier to balance out teaching the history of the Holocaust. It's in specific instances where it's convenient to them, and that's really what comes through here. Terrifying that this is who's in charge of the Department of Education, a department, by the way, that they want to shut down anyway. Donald Trump just proudly announced that he got his marching orders from Russian President Vladimir Putin after an hour phone call. Now understand that Donald Trump has since deleted the Truth Social post I'm about to show you, because it was so humiliating, it was so pathetic, it was so bottom of the barrel embarrassing as president of the United States that he removed it. But what Donald Trump said after speaking with Putin was the following, quote, "I just finished speaking by telephone with President Vladimir Putin of Russia. The call lasted approximately 1 hour and 15 minutes. We discussed the attack on Russia's docked airplanes by Ukraine and also various other attacks that have been taking place by both sides. It was a good conversation, but not a conversation that will lead to immediate peace. President Putin did say, and very strongly, that he will have to respond to a recent attack on the airfields. We also discussed Iran and the fact that time is running out on Iran's decision pertaining to nuclear weapons, which must be made quickly. I stated to President Putin that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, and on this, I believe that we are in agreement. President Putin suggested he will participate in the discussions with Iran, and that he could perhaps be helpful in getting this brought to a rapid conclusion. It is my opinion that Iran has been slow walking their decision on this very important matter, and we will need a definitive answer in a very short period of time." Trump has since deleted this post. Trump's instinct after Ukraine defends itself against a brutal illegal invasion is to call Putin and go, "How are you doing?" after being the victim of this attack. This is deference, not diplomacy. It's Trump live blogging subservience. Putin said very strongly that he's going to retaliate. Okay. Sounds less presidential and more sort of like a mouthpiece for Vladimir Putin. You're coordinating American foreign policy on Iran with Vladimir Putin, the same Putin who's been arming Iran, protecting Iran, using Iranian drones to bomb Ukrainian civilians. This is not strategy. This is a delusion. And I don't know whether Trump, when he posted this, he has since deleted it. I don't know if Trump, when he posted it, believed that he and Putin together were going to bring Iran to some kind of decision. Vladimir Putin, global peacemaker, is going to pressure Iran into denuclearization. I'm sure that that's going to happen. So understand that this is not normal and this is not diplomacy. This is a president of the United States bragging about taking foreign policy cues from the Kremlin while downplaying the violence of Putin's war being waged against Ukraine. And so the story here is not new. I'm sure you've heard me say it a dozen times at this point. Trump has a soft spot for strongmen. It's Kim Jong-un, it's Orban, it's MBS in Saudi Arabia. But this is a special relationship, not the US and UK. It's a different special relationship. It's Trump and Putin. It is submission disguised as strength. That's what this is. And the most disturbing part is that Trump is telling us again that he is happy to defer to Putin on this critical issue. Remember, he said he'd end the Ukraine war in 24 hours of becoming president-elect. Then it got pushed back to January. He'll end the Ukraine-Russia war within 24 hours of being sworn in. Then it was going to be within 100 days. That also didn't happen. And now he's just sort of platforming Putin's narrative, undermining NATO, and suggesting that Russia should be leading nuclear negotiations in the Middle East. It's whacked, folks. But it's not surprising. And so we shouldn't be shocked that he hasn't ended the war. It seems he's getting ready potentially to walk away and to cede total control to Putin on these critical issues. But somehow they got to Trump and said, this is very not good. You should delete it. And Trump did, which tells us a lot. The best way to support the David Pakman Show is by becoming a member, which gives you access to the daily bonus show, the regular show with no commercials. You also get access to our entire archive of every episode dating back a really long time and plenty of other awesome membership perks. Go to joinpakman.com, joinpakman.com. Today, we welcome to the program Garland Gilchrist, the Lieutenant Governor of Michigan and also Democratic candidate for Governor of Michigan. It's so great to have you on. We had the governor on several weeks ago and talked both about what's happening in Michigan. We talked a little bit about her recent controversies involving the President of the United States. And I think this is a great opportunity to talk to you a little bit about the nuts and bolts sort of what folks in Michigan are experiencing right now. So I really appreciate your time. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. And, nothing but controversy surrounds this president. And frankly, but like the damage that he is doing to people practically in Michigan, to our economy in Michigan, and also the damage he does principally to just how we think of ourselves as Americans. What is it? What does the rule of law mean? Like he's a deeply, deeply dangerous and problematic person. I mean, just even the announcements last night with these travel bans from Middle Eastern and African countries. I mean, that deeply impacts the state of Michigan. We have the largest population of people from Arab American countries and Middle East in the country here in the Detroit area, actually cities like Dearborn and Dearborn Heights and Melvindale, and that directly impacts people and their families. It's just really problematic.
One of the things I think is really interesting about Michigan, and this is a generalization, but that I think is representative of something interesting in the Democratic Party, which was when we looked, for example, at the 2020 primary, and if you looked on Reddit and Twitter, it seemed as though there was a lot more support, for example, for like a Bernie Sanders than maybe there was. And I say this as someone who supported Bernie, and ultimately when it became clear he wouldn't be the nominee, I supported Joe Biden. One of the things I think is interesting about Michigan is a place where you have manufacturing is important, union work is important, and there's this idea of the Democrats who are not as caught up in the internet milieu, but are really going to work, putting food on the table for their family, evaluating who's the best candidate for me, voting in that way, and then kind of getting back to work. And my interpretation in 2020 was that this is a slightly more moderate Democratic Party in Michigan than maybe you see on Reddit and Twitter. Is my interpretation or assessment accurate in your estimation?
To sum this up in one sentence, you're like, the internet is not real life. And so I understand that. I'm saying that look, I'm a software entrepreneur and a tech guy. So that's like the irony of me saying that. I think that if you actually talk to people in Michigan, they are very practical about problem solving and what their challenges are and who's going to speak to the energy, the frustration that they have. And I'm saying it's like, you ain't got to apologize. I voted for Bernie in the Democratic primary in Michigan too. That's okay. I've been all over Michigan. We have 83 counties across our two peninsulas. We're the largest state physically east of the Mississippi River. I've been all to 83 counties at least 3 times. I talk to people for real who live in Michigan, who work in Michigan, who raise their kids every day. And these voters are not ideological, but what they are are like, what is happening for me and my community? Who is going to help me see a future and a pathway for me to be more successful, for my kids to be more successful? How the hell am I going to be able to afford to send my kids to daycare, to send my kids to college, to get them prepared for a career? And they want someone who's really going to speak to that energy. And so I do think it is important that everything that we do, everything that we say, every policy that we put forward, every policy we defend, we need to be grounded in those conversations with actual people. And so that's what's driven me as
Hmm.
lieutenant governor, is to say that, I am with where the people are. And so that's where my heart is going to be. And so therefore, with the energy or the passion or the fire that I have for this president, for the way he's doing absolute damage and destruction to our manufacturing sector, the way that he is, scaring educators out of the field, like that is catastrophic for our state's future and our community's future, because people tell me that every single day.
Yesterday, we spoke to the governor of New Jersey, a state where the margin of victory for Kamala Harris in 2024 was a fraction of what it was for President Biden in 2020 and for Hillary Clinton in 2016. Michigan's situation actually was going completely back into the Trump column in the presidential election in November of 2024. What's your interpretation of that? What do you make of that?
I think people wanted to know that whoever they were going to support was as pissed off about the status quo as they were, that things weren't working for them. They weren't getting the results they needed, or certainly they weren't getting the results they needed fast enough.
Hmm.
And even progress was happening. And so that's part of why, again, in my conversations, how I come forward is as like, I'm an engineer. Like, I'm not a lawyer like most of these other political people. Like, I'm an engineer, problem solver, someone who wants to get in there and listen to people and then build a solution and make a system work for people. And when people are frustrated with the system, they want someone to either change the system or set the system on fire. We need to make changing more attractive than the destruction that Donald Trump offered. And we didn't do that in as compelling of a way because people didn't see us matching their energy. But
And
that is
do you put that, just to be clear, do you put that on feelings about what Joe Biden had done in the preceding 4 years, or feelings about what candidate Harris was offering, or a combination of the two?
I don't think it's one or the other. I mean, I think it's, and I also don't know that it's specifically even just about the 4 years of the Biden administration. I mean, if you look at, for example, the way that we have pursued, the way we pursue free trade hasn't worked out that great for a lot of people in the state of Michigan. As far as like, seeing jobs go to Mexico, to see manufacturing facilities close, to see plants turn down shifts, things like that. Like, that hasn't really worked well. We need to be able to sell stuff all over the world, but we got to do it in a way that makes sure that supports our jobs. Now, what I also see though here in Michigan is that folks do not believe there's no coherence with Trump's approach to this, right? Like, he's not doing things that are actually going to grow our economy or make sure that people can actually create those jobs here in Michigan. And so they have seen that and are like, man, we actually didn't get what he was selling. He's not giving us what he was selling because he's a liar. And so now our opportunity though is to offer a vision that says, we have seen that this system isn't working for you. Let's make it work. Let's build something that creates so that Michigan, for example, can make the things that matter going forward, whether it's in mobility, whether it's in chips or whatever it needs to be, that we can prepare our people to take advantage of that so that you can see a pathway for our communities to not just reindustrialize, but again, make the things that matter going forward.
On the manufacturing jobs, we hear all of this talk about reshoring and bringing supply chains back home. And of course, that's something countries can do. In a lot of these industries, it would take around a decade to actually do it by the time you build the capacity and plants are up and running and hiring. Okay. But one of the things that's missing from the conversation when the president just kind of flippantly says that is that we have 500,000 available manufacturing jobs in the United States right now. Now, a fraction of those are in Michigan. They're not all in Michigan, but some of them are. What is your explanation for why those jobs are going unfilled? Some ideas that are floated are, well, the wages being offered simply aren't attractive enough for the work, or there's the perception by some that these are not jobs that Americans, quote, want to do. What if we have this many open jobs right now? That really puts a question mark around the reshoring. But what is your thought as to why these jobs are remaining open?
Yeah, I think about I don't think about it necessarily in terms of reshoring. Again, what I think about in terms of what do we need to make and build going forward? And how can we make sure our people are best positioned for that? And one of those reasons, when you talk to the companies and people who are hiring for those jobs, what they'll say is, we need people with particular sets of skills and credentials. And we need to make sure that we're supporting an education and a training system that can give people those credentials. Now, I've asked those employers to therefore put some skin in the game. We'll put up some resources and partner with us so that we can, as a state, for example, make sure Michiganders have those skills. And we've seen some progress on that. Like now we, guarantee community college for every kid that's graduated from high school in the state of Michigan starting last school year. So like the kids I spoke at Oak Park High School, just outside of Detroit, all those kids can go to community college for free, tuition free if they want to. We also have stuff for people in different points of their career. We've sort of targeted certain sectors where we know a lot of those openings are, and ask those employers to come to the table. What are the things that you actually need? What does a person need to be successful in this job? Then help us work with our education systems to design programs to meet that. So the first thing I hear about is, yes, we have these openings, but these openings require particular things, and we haven't seen the scale of people who have matched those credentials to get it done. So they need to do the work to make sure they pay enough. They need to do the work to make sure they have benefits and are good jobs that are respectable. And we need to make sure we're positioning people for that success. So I think we have to do multiple things in order to make this work. But the last thing I'll say is really important, that again, this is less about like recreating something that was in the past.
Right.
This needs to be forward looking about what are the industries that are going to be most important to the country and to the world. And how can we make sure that America and Americans are positioned to lead in those industries? And that is certainly true of the state of Michigan. So what can we build? How do we prepare people to build those? How do we prepare people to start those businesses and take those jobs? And that is where our focus is. That is where my focus is. And that's just because, look, I'm an engineer who's always looking forward. So I was looking for how do we make sure we're positioned to do what Wayne Gretzky said, which is skate where the puck is going. And that's what we got to do to lead.
I want to dig now even further into manufacturing, specifically into automotive.
Yeah.
Now, I come to you with these questions because I think you know more about it than I do. My understanding is that the framework that was established by USMCA during Donald Trump's first term encouraged the manufacturing in tandem between Canada, US, and Mexico. In other words, let's bring it into these three countries from further out and reward that. But my understanding is that the blanket tariffs now that involve Canada and Mexico would actually punish the companies that did what USMCA was meant to encourage. Is my interpretation correct? And talk a little bit about how this will all affect automotive in Michigan.
So your interpretation is pretty much on point. And frankly, what it represents, though, to even zoom out a little bit, David, is that, Trump calls himself a deal maker, but clearly the deals that he makes are like worth toilet paper, man. Like, I mean, you talk about USMCA was a deal that he crafted,
Yeah.
that he cut, but now it's something that he is absolutely undermining. And so these businesses who employ a lot of people in the state of Michigan are now like, well, what are we supposed to do? Like we worked with you to get this deal, we complied with it, and
Right.
now you're yanking the chair from under us. So it just shows to how untrustworthy and incompetent this man and his team are. They're not committed to the success of Michiganders. They're not committed to the success of this industry. I don't know what their goals are. They haven't really even articulated them. So I think what we are trying to provide, at least at the state level, is to say, look, for the instability and calamity that you're getting out of Washington, we want to give you a different kind of energy here in the state of Michigan. We'll be your partner to go and to try to negotiate and advocate to make sure you have a seat at the table, to get the clarity that you need to plan, because for their lack of planning, when they can't plan, it means they can't put shifts on for Michiganders. It means that people can't put food on the table. It means that people can't send their kids to a summer camp now that we coming into the summer. There are real practical implications of that, and to those choices being made by this administration.
I want to talk a little bit about your engineering and tech background that you mentioned. One of the funny things in politics is that candidates and elected officials, no matter what their background is, say that their background is really well suited to the job that they either have or are trying to get. And one of the interesting things is Vivek Ramaswamy has talked up his background as a startup entrepreneur tech guy. Elon Musk, we were told, his background makes him perfectly suited to figure out what's wasteful in government, where's the fraud and abuse, let's find it, let's fire these people, lay these others. it all has kind of imploded, right? So one of the things that I think is clear is that background is interesting, but how it's applied to the job of government is maybe the more critical part. So talk a little bit about that, because while I've said we need more than just lawyers as elected officials, there's no doubt about it. We need more than just like big business, people like a Mark Wayne Mullen type. We need to go further. But that's not a guarantee that a different background is necessarily suited to the job, if you know what I mean.
100%. What it means is for me, look, as a kid who, got a computer when I was 5 years old, who was a software engineer at Microsoft and started and sold 2 technology companies, all that means is that as an engineer, my job is to make systems work for people. The difference between what Elon Musk did to the federal government is when they say efficiency, all they mean is firing people and breaking things.
Right.
What I am focused on as my engineering is about effectiveness, how to make something actually work for people, deliver value for people, to create something that they can depend on and trust and rely on. They are using technology and technology skills to break people's trust, to make things not work for people, or to only work for a few or for them personally, which is what I see with Musk. They're trying to get this data to feed into his own AI system.
Yeah.
And I think so for me here and for Michigan, in a state that has made the things that mattered for a century, understanding sort of where technology is going and how we can make sure that we're positioned to make things that matter going forward, because these changes, whether it's, artificial intelligence and large language models, they're going to have a tremendous influence on our education system and on our economy going forward. And I don't want Michiganders to be left out or left behind. I want us to lead. And so I think having a leader who can understand those things, who's not intimidated by, who when these companies come in and try to have a meeting with me, I'm going to be able to call them when they try to lie to me and tell me something that's not true. I think we need someone with that kind of credibility in the room. But you must connect that to the actual experiences of people. And so when I spend time on the ground all over the state of Michigan, or when I think about my own kids, again, my twins who are graduating from the 6th grade and my baby girl's graduating from kindergarten, when I talk to their friends as parents, their education professionals who are in front of them, needing to be grounded in those experiences so that they can trust that I'm going to be the person who's going to have them in the room with me when we are doing the things we do, negotiating what we need to negotiate from a policy standpoint, a program standpoint, and even a practice standpoint for how we do things in Michigan. That's what the next governor, I think, of our state needs to be able to do. As a governor, it's different than a legislator or like a senator, right? Like your job is not to sort of be sort of one voice in this cacophony that is, the U.S. Capitol. It's to be someone who can deliver for people and stand for our values and get things done. And that's what engineers and problem solvers do, with make things that are effective for people. And I've delivered results like that on the issues that matter across the state of Michigan. And I'll do that continuing going forward as governor.
Yeah, listen, not to make technology and technocracy the number one thing, but if you saw some of those hearings with the TikTok CEO and you saw the caliber of the questions that were being asked by people who clearly did not even understand what they were asking, scary stuff. That is becoming a growing core competency, I think, for anyone who wants to be taken seriously in the political space.
That's right. And look, there's work to do, but I think you have a lot of people who are ready to step up and step in a way, because frankly, they're like me. They're offended that they've seen people just bastardize what it means to have technical competency and use it to hurt people. Well, I'm not doing this to do anything but position people for success, to position our communities for success. And so using those powers for good, I think is what we need to think about.
We've been speaking with Michigan's Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist, who's also running for governor in the state of Michigan. Really appreciate your time today. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me, David.
If you value what we do at The David Pakman Show, remember to support us on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/David Pakman Show, where you can get access to behind-the-scenes videos, the Daily Bonus Show, the commercial-free Daily Show. You can support the show for as little as $2 a month. Check it out at patreon.com/David Pakman Show. Well, Donald Trump has reemerged like a phoenix rising over the horizon after 3 days or 4 days with no public events. And it might have been better if he hadn't, because what came out of his mouth was so disjointed, a mess of lies and delusion and absolute gibberish. And by the way, with terrible audio, just the complete, I think Antifa might have been running the mics for this event. This was the summer soiree on the White House South Lawn. Trump starting with an absolute whopper about grocery prices and gas prices, just fabricated numbers. A really strange moment, not clear what he's referring to, seems completely addled, and they just can't get the audio right. Poor guy.
We're devastated. The last administration, in my opinion, the most unsuccessful administration maybe in the history of our country. Grocery prices went through the roof. While grocery prices now are down. You remember they were talking about eggs. My first week in office, the press was screaming about eggs. Eggs have gone up to
eggs.
187%. I said, I'm sorry, I just got here. And the eggs went up. Now the eggs are down at the same price they were. We got them all the way down. And we had, 3 weeks ago for Easter, we had an egg hunt, an egg roll they called it. And they said, sir, could you order, a couple of months ago, could you order plastic eggs? I said, we're not ordering plastic eggs. And by the time we had the event, eggs were all the way down. But think of it, grocery prices are down, gasoline prices are down, and we're down just in time. $1, we had numerous states, $1.98 a gallon.
So I looked for that information. I was not able to find a single state in which gas was $1.98 on Memorial Day. Big picture, gas prices are up a little since Trump took office. Not a lot. And just to be clear, I don't put a lot of stock in gas prices as something presidents control. You all know that, but he's just lying about gas prices. They were around $3.04 a gallon on average when he took office. Right now, they're about $3.12. It's not a lot higher. It's like 2-3% higher, but they're certainly not lower. And then as far as grocery prices go, grocery prices aren't down. They are rising slowly as they were at the end of Joe Biden's presidency, along with inflation being between 2 and 2.5%. So grocery prices are sort of steady up a little bit over the last 4 months. Trump's just not dealing in reality here. He's, I guess, trying to rewrite it. And this only gets weirder. Trump then going into talking about a team and hiring and appointments and fill rates. And he has a waiting list. Completely feeble. Just gibberish coming out of his mouth.
You really are. And someday, one of you, maybe 2 of you or 3 of you, will be standing right here saying very similar words. I hope you're saying similar words. But that's a real possibility because there really is this greatness in this crowd. There's greatness. You might not even know that, but there's greatness in this crowd. The caliber of talent we've assembled is unparalleled. And this is really the strongest, most talented team that we've had, and I think that this government has had in a long time and maybe ever. I really think this could be the best team. We worked
If you're struggling to follow this, you're not alone.
hard on it. In just 135 days, we've hired over 3,200 patriots to deliver on the mandate that we received in November. November 5th, we want to go down as one of the most important days in the history of our country. That's Election Day. We're going to make it the most important day. And as of tonight, we filled 91% of our political appointments. And
It's not even clear what he's talking about. I don't even know that he knows what year it is from the way this guy is talking, what mandate he imagines he got. It's not a campaign rally, but he sounds like he's giving a job fair speech at some kind of fantasy White House that exists only in his own mind. And then in a completely surreal moment, he again talks about how he brought back $5 trillion from the Middle East. He makes it sound like he brought back duffel bags full of cash, and he got a free plane with it as a bonus.
But 6 months ago, we had a nation that was as cold as ice. It was cold. The whole world was laughing at us, and they're not laughing anymore. That I can tell you now because of the people here tonight. We have the hottest, most talked about country anywhere in the world.
It's hot.
I went to the Middle East. We went to Qatar, Saudi Arabia. We went to UAE. We went to 3 stops. We brought back $5.1 trillion. Think of that. 5.1. They ordered massive amounts of military equipment, regular equipment, 200 Boeing aircraft. And we got one for free for the nation. You've been hearing that. The United States Air Force got one for free. I say I'd like one because we need it as Air Force One until the other ones are done. And they said, we would be pleased to give you. So they gave us a Boeing 747 for the United States Air Force. And it's just incredible. The press picked it up and they said, he got a plane. I didn't get a plane. They got a plane. But that's the way it is. You're going to get to know as you deal with the fake news.
Yeah. None of that makes any sense, as I'm sure you can tell. Who's they? Who was trying to buy 200 planes? Where is this $5 trillion he claims he got? He's bragging about getting a free plane, but it's also not for him, and it's also kind of not free. It's complete incoherence. And this is the guy that Republicans are saying is fit to run the country. But he is rambling through completely hallucinated timelines, imaginary transactions, and made up numbers. And it's really like watching someone act out a fever dream on national TV. He should have stayed hidden for a fourth or fifth day, whatever it ultimately ended up being. And it raises again the question, who's actually in charge? Because this is what he's up to with almost nothing on his public calendar. Who's actually making the decisions? And it seems to be people with even worse instincts than Donald Trump. The Trump-Elon bromance is over. And Republicans are now admitting it out loud. House Speaker MAGA Mike Johnson, who reportedly talks to Trump multiple times a day, is now confirming Trump is not happy with what's going on with Elon Musk. And he's using careful language that I think we need to interpret for what it really means.
Calls him back today. I talk to President Trump, all the time, multiple times a day.
Oh yeah.
Obviously, we've talked about this. As you know, he's not delighted that Elon did a 180 on that. But look, I don't know what happened in 24 hours. Everybody can draw their own conclusions about that. Okay.
Right.
But I look forward to talking to my friend about it again, and I'm not upset about it. All right. Yeah. Olivia.
He's not upset whatsoever. So Trump isn't pleased is political speak for Trump is absolutely furious. This all started after Elon Musk torched Trump's budget as a disgusting abomination. We talked about that earlier this week. And now MAGA Mike Johnson is also saying he tried to call Elon Musk, but Elon didn't pick up the phone.
What do you think changed? Why do you think he's coming out against this now? And have you spoken to the president and Elon since the infamous tweet?
Well, I'll tell you, I called Elon last night and he didn't answer, but I hope to talk to him today. I mean, it's not, it's very friendly, and we've laughed about our differences on policy before.
Oh yeah.
I'm not upset.
It's just a barrel of laughs
about this, and I just
Elon Musk, who is known to have a great sense of humor.
I think he understands, and he's acknowledged to me before that this is so serious that we can't fool around with it. I mean, the debt cliff is approaching very quickly, right? All the things that are in this bill are so important for the U.S. economy. It's going to be jet fuel for the U.S. economy.
All right. So the point here is he called Elon. Elon didn't quite take his phone call. MAGA Mike Johnson asked, what about the midterms? Is this going to be a problem for the midterms? And he says, oh, no, no, no. When the big, beautiful bill passes, everybody's going to do so well. We're going to absolutely crush in the midterms.
And then yesterday, 24 hours later, he does a 180 and he comes out and opposes the bill. And it surprised me, frankly. And I don't take it personal. We don't take it personal. Policy differences are not personal. I think he's flat wrong. I think he's way off on this, and I've told him as much, and I've said it publicly and privately. I'm very consistent in that. But am I concerned about the effect of this on the midterms? I'm not. Let me tell you why. Because when the big, beautiful bill is done and signed into law, every single American is going to do better. This bill is geared for middle and working class Americans. And
we know, of course, that those are also lies, but, buyer beware. If he's convinced this is going to win everything for them, then so be it. And I think that there's a critical point to make about this Trump-Musk disagreement on the bill. Neither of these guys is the good guy here. Trump's budget is a scam, and Elon Musk's motives are entirely selfish. And the reason they're turning on each other is because their egos collided and their priorities collided. Elon Musk is now worried about what's best for my business here, what's best for me, as he is getting kicked out / leaving Doge and government. And Trump wants a political accomplishment. And that's what this is really about. I get, Elon's ideologically opposed to what's in the bill. Yeah, maybe, but that's irrelevant if it were good for him personally. And that's what really this is about. Final note, the fact that even Steve Bannon is now saying we got to tax the rich is further proof of the insanity of where we find ourselves.
One thing, if you want to stop the dead bomb, Elon, and the guys on Capitol Hill, you're going to have to raise taxes. The wealthy can't get an extension of the tax cut. That's got to go to the middle class and the working class.
Uh-oh.
That has to be extended and has to be made permanent. At 40%, the top bracket are 40%, you pick them. That's got to go to 39, go back to 30, snap back to 39.5% and go to 40%. The math simply doesn't work. Have I not said this 2 billion times? And of course, all the lackeys for the wealthy. Right, here's a debt bomb. And Ron John and other people are working on I think, quite smart changes that can be made to the big, beautiful bill, but now it's in basically turmoil and chaos.
This is a guy who used to openly campaign for economic accelerationist collapse. And even he knows the budget is indefensible, but of course he's also trying to pick sides carefully here. And what we are seeing is less a clash of ideas. It's presented as a clash of ideas and principles. This is a civil war of narcissism. Elon, Trump, Johnson, Bannon, they're clawing for control of a party with no vision. It's a party with slogans and resentment and chaos, and they don't even know what they're doing. But to the extent that the civil war is going to hamper them, let's push it. On the bonus show today, the big, beautiful bill's progress has stalled in the Senate. That's the next issue. We will talk about it. We are also going to discuss this big controversial departure from the Democratic Party of Joe Biden's former press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre. I find it all very low energy. And finally, Caroline Leavitt has ditched her big cross necklace after Jon Stewart made fun of her. All of those stories and more on today's bonus show. Don't miss it. Sign up at joinpacman.com. Look forward to seeing you there. Thanks a lot for watching today's show. I just want to take a second to tell you about today's sponsors. There are only 2 things that matter with a VPN. Does the VPN use open source software that users can verify is not logging their internet activity? Have police gotten a court order to get user activity logs from that VPN, only to find out that the logs never existed because of the company's transparent no-log policy? The only VPN who can answer yes to both of those questions is Private Internet Access, the only VPN who can prove that your data stays private. They're giving you 83% off, which is just $203 a month, plus 4 extra months for free at piavpn.com/DavidP.